In this video, I'm going to introduce the phase and activity codes which are used within the daily reporting feature of WellSeeker Pro. Activity codes allow the user to accurately record all activities that have been carried out on the rig site over the course of the job, while phase codes allow the user to group activities together. These codes are important as they are used by the program to automatically calculate things like distance drilled, drilling hours, circulating hours, and MPT. They're also used to calculate key performance indicators. Careful consideration should be given to these options before a company starts to use the software, because changing these codes after a lot of wells have been drilled can be very time consuming, as existing data then needs to be adjusted. Taking the time to choose at the start will save a lot of time and effort in the long run. Phase and activity codes are accessed at operator level in the WellSeeker database tree by right-clicking and selecting Reporting. This means that all wells below a given operator will have access to the same codes, and these codes need to be set for each operator in the database. To begin with, we'll look at activity codes. WellSeeker comes as standard with 150 activity codes. These activity codes cover almost all rig operations, and the list is fully editable, allowing the user to delete codes, rename existing codes and descriptions, and create new ones. The user can also choose which codes they want to activate by selecting the tick box to the right. If a code is not active, then it will not be available to select in the drop-down menu within the Daily Report dialog. While the user is able to edit existing codes and add new ones, it is important to understand that some of these codes are more important than others. We'll now take a look at the activity codes that the user should be aware of. Any code 2 represents drilling activities. This is important as it allows the program to track drilling hours, distances, and differentiate slide and rotation. 2J and 2K are the most important of these codes, as they are the default codes that are used when we populate the daily activity section from the slide sheet. So it is important that these two codes are kept active and not changed in any way. Code 5 represents circulating. Anytime a code 5 is selected, circulating hours will be recorded, so it is important to understand that if a new circulating code is added, it must be 5 followed by a letter, otherwise it will not register as circulation. The only exception to the circulation rule is code 10C, reshoot surveys, cycle pumps, downlink tools. If this is selected, it will also be counted as circulating. Code 8 represents rig MPT. When a code 8 is selected, the line in the daily activity editor will be highlighted in red. Code 26 represents directional MPT. The standard list does not contain any 26 activity codes, so these will need to be added by the user manually. Having both rig and directional MPT codes allows the user to record all MPT while at the same time being able to differentiate between the type. The final code to consider is code 3Z, which is for sidetracking. This is important for several reasons. Firstly, like the drilling activity 2 codes, it gives the user the ability to edit the end depth in the daily activity dialog. In this case, instead of the depth being deeper, it will be shallower. The reason this code is so important is that WellSeeker does not track the hours or depths associated with it like it does for the drilling codes, which means it will not adversely affect the various statistics and KPI outputs. We'll now take a look at the phase codes. The standard installation does not include any phase codes, as these can be quite different from company to company. As mentioned, the purpose of the phase codes is to allow the user to group activity codes together in the daily activity section of the daily reporting. Unlike activity codes, there is nothing special about any of these phase codes. They all do the same job, so the user can enter anything they want to here. The important thing to understand is that correctly used, the phase codes will allow the user to split their well into the relevant sections, which then allows the program to produce powerful KPIs for end-of-well reports. It also allows similar sections to be compared across multiple different wells via the analytics. What is showing on the screen is an example of the type of phase codes commonly used in North America. An alternative option may be to have a phase for each hole size. Once phase and activity codes have been chosen, these can be added to the defaults table, which is accessed via the Tools menu. When defaults are entered, they will automatically be assigned to any new operator that is created in the database. You can also choose to set to default from the activity in the phase code dialog. It's important to understand that if you have an existing well which references certain codes in the daily activity section of the daily report, and the codes are then changed or deleted, then these codes will also be removed from the daily activity editor. In this situation, they will then need to be reselected manually. This now concludes our introduction to the phase and activity codes.